What is up, people? In today's video we're going to be answering the question, how far in your society should unpopular views be open to discussion? Now, let's think about unpopular views for a minute. What is unpopular views? Is it views that are so unpopular that no one knows about them? Or is it views that are controversial, something that attracts attention and something that perhaps a large number of people disagree with? Right? I choose to go by that definition. So going by that definition, something controversial that comes to mind lately is the Repeal 377A Act. Right? And what it is the act that criminalizes gay sex between a man and another man. Now personally, I feel I'm a live and let live kind of guy, so I don't really think it's an issue. But quite obviously, it is an unpopular it's unpopular. The act itself is unpopular within the gay community, and the act of trying to repeal the act is unpopular with people in the religious community. So clearly there are there are different ways of looking at unpopular, but then the question is, should we actually censor these views or should we open it to discussion? And I think if we just observe from what is going on in our society, it's very obvious that the question has already been answered. There has been a lot of discussion online, there's been a lot of discussion out in the open. Singapore as a country doesn't see a problem with discussing these things. And honestly, I don't see a problem either, right? So it only becomes a problem to the point, like it's okay, it's great actually if all that discussion leads to more understanding of different perspectives. It gives us more common ground, it brings us to a new level of enlightenment, it brings us closer to the truth, right? If this kind of open discussions help in the development of our citizens and their thinking and the thought processes and all the rest of it. But to the extent that, if bigots and people who are not intellectually enlightened, they hog the center stage and start spreading hate and bigotry about these issues, then I really don't think it's going to be helpful. So in that case, these unpopular views should not really be open to discussion. So whether or not should be open to discussion is up to you. It depends on how you argue the situation. Similarly, some people view that this whole debate about CPF contributions started by Roy Nung. Some people love him, some people hate him. I think that insofar as the educated populace, the ones, like those people who can think for themselves and think about the issue from various different perspectives and give a fair and balanced judgment on what is going on, insofar as these people are the ones leading the discussion, I think it is perfectly fine to open up this society to discussion of these unpopular views, right? Now, you got to think about this. If these views were never allowed to be aired, how are Singaporeans going to have the opportunity to go about discussing these views, right? How are they going to have the opportunity to grow? So I think that in such matters, the government can sometimes take a step back and let the citizens do the talking, let them do the discovery on their own, maybe sometimes act as a moderator in these discussions. And clearly, there has been a lot of discussion online. So once again, we see that these unpopular views are actually being discussed quite openly. Another local example, Catherine Lim, who in 1994 wrote a very controversial article criticizing the PAP, and it was published in the Straits Times. And as you can probably tell, a shitstorm started to brew after that. And even till today, those unpopular views are still openly discussed. Well, to the extent that they discuss it in a fair and unbiased manner, and to the extent that they don't end up being sued, then yeah, it's pretty open to discussion. Now, let's talk about other kinds of unpopular discussions. And the one very, very, very unpopular discussion that was brought about by Amy Chong, and if you don't already know her, she was the woman who made very derogatory remarks about Malay weddings. I'm sure she will be forever immortalized as that woman who was insensitive, who was inconsiderate, and the list goes on, and she will live a life of suffering as long as she stays in Singapore, because everyone's going to go, aren't you that woman who made that, for the rest of her life, right? So, but the fact remains that it was a very unpopular views, and Singaporeans as a whole stood up to criticize these views. And what this does is that it provides our society with an opportunity for deep thinking, for deep reflections, right? Whether or not there exists a racist in all of us, or whether or not there exists someone who's fair and just. You question yourselves, you start to think, you start to reflect, and this opportunity for reflection makes us all better people. Another case in point would be Anton Casey, the guy who took the MRT train with his son and called people who took the train poor. By his definition, I'm poor because I take the train too, and by his definition, all the other millions of people. But you know, from his perspective, everyone was poor because he was a rich guy. And he actually said that poor people have a stench emanating from them, which is very unpopular with everyone, including me. Now, while it is unpopular, the silver lining is also that it gave Singaporeans an opportunity to reflect about the social-economic income inequality, and whether or not it gave the rich people also an opportunity to reflect upon whether or not they were behaving in an appropriate manner if they actually did something like what Anton Casey did. So in these two examples also, there were very unpopular views, but society still stands to benefit if the people starts to grow and starts to be more enlightened as a result of this. However, if Singaporeans start engaging in name calling, start engaging in all sorts of, you know, derogatory behavior, then things don't go in a very nice place. So I guess then the question is, these unpopular views, do they actually bring about growth and enlightenment, or do they bring about bigotry? Now, there is this underlying assumption that things cannot be discussed, because here they say, should unpopular views be open to discussion? And there's this underlying assumption that things can be censored, that we can censor unpopular views. But in this day and age, this is something you want to address, in this day and age with the internet, with social media, with Facebook, you really think unpopular views can be censored? You think they can be suppressed? I don't think so. Whatever happens, it's going to come up in a firestorm of discussion. So we are already at that point in time whereby it doesn't matter whether or not it should be or should not be, rather it is whether or not it can be or cannot be, and the answer is it cannot be suppressed. So, knowing that it cannot be suppressed, as a society we should aim to discuss these issues in a mature and understanding manner to add more value to our society. Thank you.